Hey friends, and welcome back to A Simple Truth. So Mark 4 and 5 is where we are today. And we're going to be seeing a really similar account to what we saw yesterday and a little bit the day before that as well. So if you remember, we've been looking at a lot of parables. And then we also saw the account that despite all the parables, despite miracles, there was a lot of people in Nazareth, Jesus' hometown, that didn't even believe that still, despite that. And again, Jesus said why, right? So I think he quoted Isaiah when saying that their hearts had become hardened and calloused. So we saw a bit of that yesterday. Today, again, we're going to see a lot of the similar stories, some of the similar parables, and all of these through Mark's account. So again, this is Mark 4 and 5. So chapter 4. And again, he began to teach by the sea, and a great multitude was gathered to him, so that he got into a boat and sat in it on the sea. And the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. Then he taught them many things by parables, and said to them in his teaching, Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and it happened as he sowed that some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds of the air came and devoured it. Some fell on stony ground, where it did not have much earth, and immediately it sprang up, because it had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. But other seed fell on good ground, and yielded a crop that sprang up, increased, and produced some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. And he said to them, He who has ears, let him hear. But when he was alone, those around him and the 12 asked him about the parable. And he said to them, To you it has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but to those who are outside, all things come in parables, so that, seeing, they may see and not perceive, and hearing, they may hear and not understand, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven them. And he said to them, Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word, and these are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. Like these wise are the ones sown on stony ground, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness, and they have no root in themselves, and so endure only a time. Afterward, when tribulation or persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. Now these are the ones sown among thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires of other things, entering in, choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. Also he said to them, Is a lamp brought to be put under a basket or under a bed? Is it not to be set on a lampstand? For there is nothing hidden which will not be revealed, nor anything been kept secret that it should be come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Then he said to them, Take heed what you hear. With the same measure you use, it will be measured to you, and to you who hear, more will be given. For whoever has, to him more will be given. But whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken away from him. Then he said, The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground, and should sleep by night, and rise by day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He himself does not know how. For the earth yields crops by itself, first the blade, then the head, after that the full grain in the head. But when the grain ripens, immediately he puts in a sickle, because the harvest has come. Then he said, To what shall we liken the kingdom of God, or with what parable shall we picture it? It is like a mustard seed, which, when it is sown on the ground, is smaller than all the other seeds on the earth. But when it is sown, it grows up and becomes greater than all the herbs, and shoots out large branches, so that the birds of the air may nest under its shade. And with many such parables he spoke to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable he did not speak to them. And when they were alone, he explained all things to his disciples. On the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, Let us cross over to the other side. Now, when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and the other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waters beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? When he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly, and said to one another, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Chapter 5. Then they came to the other side of the sea, and to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him, and he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, that you do not torment me." For he said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." Then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now, a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirit went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and drowned into the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one that had been demon-possessed, and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who saw it told them how it had happened to them, how it had happened to him who had been demon-possessed, and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he has had compassion on you." And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. Now, when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live." So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well." Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging around you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble this teacher any further?" As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and saw a tumult, and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and mother of the child and those who were with him, and entered where the child was laying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and that something should be given her to eat. So again, we saw the similar accounts of a lot of that stuff yesterday, and again, I think even the day before that. Looking at this, I keep, for a long time, I've kind of struggled with the idea of why do you speak to these people in parables when we can't even understand them? Is what his disciples ask Jesus, and there's kind of an interesting response there where Jesus says they can be hearing, they can hear or be hearing but never comprehend. They can be seeing but never really get what the kingdom of heaven is like, or what stepping out in faith essentially looks like. So he says some of that interesting stuff to them. And that also made me think, why didn't Jesus do many miracles in Nazareth? And I think we're going to see some of this tomorrow as well. The similar account to what we saw yesterday. On account of their unbelief, Jesus didn't do a lot of miracles. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm wondering if it's in part because people who are earnestly seeking Christ will see amazing things. Those who are skeptical from the outset and really are just interested in, maybe poking holes in it, or not seeking with a true and earnest heart, as God says, like the heart of a child, that a sign won't be given them. And I think that's what he's talking about when he says a wicked generation seeks a sign. I don't think that means that it's wicked for us to want Jesus to perform healings if we have like a sick family member, or friend, or something, to hope and pray for God's restoration in our life, recognizing that a greater restoration is obviously the spiritual, but hoping and praying that God would heal particular situations. Anyway, I say all that to say I wonder if that's some of the difference, is some of the skeptics that were in Nazareth that didn't even believe at all, and trying to see how Jesus had maybe done some of this, some of his things, because they've heard about him, right? They had heard about him from surrounding lands and said, hey, that's Jesus. He grew up in this town. And then Jesus, when he shows up, he only heals a couple people. So I always thought that was interesting, because obviously God is not limited by the people surrounding him. I think that'd be a pretty big mistake to think, oh, Jesus couldn't do it because people didn't believe. We've never seen a limitation to Jesus's power. We've seen a method for how he works, but each healing looks a little bit different. Anyway, I'll keep it brief there. Just looking at it, that's what I walked away with today. As always, friends, thanks so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you.